Hey, you. Why haven't you subscribed yet? Hit the subscribe button and the bell. Enjoy the video. Hour 3, off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. AFR, presented by Relief Windows. I'm Matt.
Love you, Matt.
Joseph Rodriguez.
Hey, Joe, what you doing?
The Brain.
Hey, the brain got a poop.
And Mr. Toby Tom Play. We're here. Glad you are as well. Get out there and make it a good one, y'all. It is game day and game week. Saints, Raiders tonight, Monday Night Football. We are headed out to Las Vegas in about 45 minutes from right now. And, of course, it's game week for LSU. Ed Orgeron met with the media earlier today to preview LSU, Mississippi State. We'll get into that. We do have, however, some breaking news here as we start the 5 o'clock hour number 3 here. I mean, and this has got to be breaking news. And this is on the homepage at ESPN.com. When you look at the headlines right there at ESPN.com, I mean, go look at the headlines right there. You'll see it. As we zoom in, LSU has picked Miles Brennan to succeed Joe Burrow at quarterback. Breaking news. It's you knew that?
That made the homepage.
Did you? Wait, you knew that?
Yeah.
Who are your sources?
Sources.
Maybe it's Ed Orgeron who said 1 million times this summer that Miles Brennan's the quarterback.
Could be.
It's like, this isn't even on the college football page at ESPN.com. It's on the homepage. You go to the homepage, on the right side of the homepage, top headlines. Jimmy G has a chance to play. Broncos lose Sutton for the year. Bama names Mac Jones quarterback for the opener. LSU picks Brennan to succeed Burrow. Like, it's right there. Boom. LSU picks Miles Brennan to succeed Burrow quarterback. In case you didn't know. So LSU's opened up a 19-point favorite over Mississippi State Saturday in Tiger Stadium. I like it. The number's probably right. Interestingly enough, though, Vegas has been uncharacteristically off so far. And some of that makes sense, right? You've had opt-outs. You've had no fans. They're just variables that have been really difficult to account for when it comes to handicapping games. But for now, we're looking at LSU as a 19-point favorite early over Mississippi State. It's actually in some places dropped. I'm looking at ESPN right now, and they've got it at 16.5 right now with LSU as a favorite. So that number's come down. Personally, and we'll get Friday when we talk about this game, we'll give a pick. I think LSU's going to have no trouble at all covering that number. But then again, who really knows what to expect in many respects with this? Here's what I'll say with regard to the matchup in particular, and we'll get into some of what Ed Orgeron had to say as he started previewing the matchup. When I look at Mississippi State, obviously they are one of the more intriguing teams in the SEC because Mike Leach has been one of the more notorious head coaches in college football, from Texas Tech, obviously to Washington State, now Mississippi State, running the air raid. He made Texas Tech a national contender. He won at Washington State, and now he's bringing that offense into the Southeastern Conference. So, can Mike Leach make this work in the SEC? I think is a fascinating test case to see if it'll work against SEC defenses. And he'll face a really athletic LSU defense on Saturday with an attacking style with Bo Pelini and a fast, athletic defensive front. And maybe they'll have some success offensively. But the other thing to keep in mind specifically with this matchup is that Mike Leach's defenses have never been good. When you look back just over the last 3 years, it was 2017, 50th in scoring defense. 2018, 58th in scoring defense. Last year, Washington State last year was 93rd in the country in scoring defense. even if Leach's teams are able to put up some points, I don't know that I have any confidence at all in Mississippi State's ability to stop LSU from doing whatever it wants moving up and down the field. Remember, Mississippi State also lost 5 of its top 7 leading tacklers from a year ago. Yes, they returned Errol Thompson in the inside. They returned 2 rotational defensive linemen from a year ago, but that are really good players and probably better defensive linemen than any that Leach has ever had at any of his stops. I'm saying that sort of flippantly. I don't know if I went back and dissected it. Maybe there was a kid one year at Texas Tech that became a high draft pick or something I'm not thinking of. But by and large, State's defenses the past couple of years have been really good. From 2 years ago with Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat to last year, they were still a really good defensive team, but they lost much of the core of that defense from a year ago, which makes the challenge of replacing Burrow and a lot of those guys on offense a little bit easier for LSU on Saturday. There's a few really big questions, though, that I have about how this game is going to play out. We'll delve into that, but Ed Orgeron did talk about what it's been like studying Mike Leach and getting ready for this game.
Mike Leach has done a very good job wherever he's at with the air raid. He has some tremendous offensive weapons at Mississippi State. One, Colin Hill, one of the backs that I had the most respect for, some of the most respect for in the SEC last year. A very dangerous back, and especially in the spread offense. We've been studying his offense at Washington State, and his running backs could hit the hole, could bounce it out, and make people miss.
So it wasn't just Washington State, though. One of the things Orgeron said, which is very interesting, and this is 15 brain. Not only do you have a new head coach in Mike Leach, you've got a new defensive coordinator in Zach Arnett, who came from San Diego State, and you've got a new quarterback in KJ Costello, who's coming from Stanford. So the particulars of who you're going to see on Saturday all come from very different places to intersect in Baton Rouge on Saturday, and that's created a different challenge for LSU in preparing for this game.
The COVID-19 was an advantage for us in some ways that we wasn't out in spring recruiting, and we were able to game plan all of our teams on our schedule. I think Mississippi State was maybe the 8th game on the schedule, and we had already had game plan them. So you got to look at Washington State for scheme on offense. You got to look at San Diego State scheme for defense, and then you got to look at Mississippi State for personnel. So you're really scouting 3 different teams, so it's 3 times the work.
So, and Costello, as you mentioned, is the 4th. If you're scouting Costello, then you're looking at Stanford for what Costello did at Stanford, scouting that player as well, that personnel. So it's a challenge, certainly, to prepare for this in particular, but LSU is just that much better of a roster and of a program right now than Mississippi State. But Arnett led a very strong defense at San Diego State last year. And as we've talked about, something that Leach has never been able to do really is establish a consistent defensive presence. Here was Ed Orgeron talking about Mississippi State's new defense.
On defense, Zach Arnett's coming from San Diego State. Very impressive numbers. Gave up 12.7 points per game, was second in the country. He was second in a couple of categories. I think he had a top 5 defense overall. And as we know, Mississippi State always has big, agile defensive linemen, 2 outstanding linebackers, safeties that are going to hit you, corners that's going to cover. I have a lot of respect for Mississippi State. I played them a bunch. Those young men are very tough. They love football. They're going to be very well coached. So it'll be a tremendous talent for a football team.
And Orgeron, again, meeting with the media on Monday via Zoom, previewing Mississippi State. I mentioned for me, there's a few questions that I have. Obviously, most notably is going to be the quarterbacks, right? This is one of the most intriguing matchups in the SEC because of the quarterbacks. You have KJ Costello, a grad transfer who 2 years ago threw for 3,500 yards and 29 touchdowns at Stanford. Now he's at Mississippi State running Mike Leach's air raid. And Mike Leach is familiar with him because they were both in the Pac-12 and they scouted each other, played against each other every year. So that's part of this equation. Can that offense work in this league? 1. 2 is Miles Brennan, because not only is it a new quarterback, sort of an atypical situation with a guy who waited his turn, but the flip side of it is he's replacing Joe Burrow. And when you're the guy replacing the quarterback with the greatest season in the history of college football, there's obviously going to be a lot of attention, a lot of added pressure on Miles Brennan this year. So which quarterback can develop timing? Remember, Costello, also coming over from Stanford, arrived late because Stanford's on that quarter system. So like we saw this with Andres Pete when the Saints drafted him. He was late to camp because he was still finishing his degree in school because Stanford's on the quarter system. So Costello got to Starkville later than normally would have been. Got a later start. You throw in all the COVID factors, etc. How much of that does it impact? So the quarterback play is a big one for me. Pressuring the quarterbacks is going to be significant. Can LSU in that defensive front get pressure on Costello? The only way really to disrupt that offense is to disrupt the timing of the routes. And it's very hard to pressure quarterbacks when everything's timing. Shotgun, 1-2, throw. So the way you do it is you're either able to cover and make the quarterback hold the ball a beat longer and get pressure, or you lock down receivers and interrupt those passing lanes. I think LSU certainly has the athletes to do it, but can they pressure Costello? And then the flip side is true. Can this LSU offensive line hold up? Mississippi State has Errol Thompson back. They had two really good defensive linemen back. This will be a better defense talent-wise than Leach has ever had. But still don't know if this Mississippi State defense is good enough to keep pace with LSU. They did a good job a year ago, relatively, speaking of the rest of college football, in Starkville. But when you look at LSU's front line, Liam Shanahan in the middle is a massive part of this equation working. I mean, he's one half of that battery. And, Ed Orgeron talked when they first got Liam Shanahan, he talked about if he wasn't sure if Liam would be able to transition with the physicality from the Ivy League to the SEC. We're going to find out, but I asked Ed earlier today what he's seen from Liam so far in camp, if that's alleviated any of his concern about that transition.
He's done well, surprisingly well. That was my biggest concern. He was going against Tyler, goes against Apu, goes against Joe Evans. Very smart, as we know that, can make all the calls, but he's physical enough. And now he's going to get tested throughout the year, especially when they put one of those 350-pounders right on top of him. He's got to block him, but I think he can. In fact, I feel good about it. I'm very glad that we have him. He's been a big plus for us.
Ed Orgeron, again, previewing LSU, Mississippi State, something we'll delve deeper into as we move throughout this week. But line of scrimmage is always so key, especially in this league. LSU lost a ton on the line of scrimmage, but they have a lot back. Let's see how LSU and Mississippi State match up on Saturday. Tigers are a big favorite. That line opened at 19. It's dropped a little bit, but I think the Tigers will have no problem winning this game on Saturday with ease. So we'll delve deeper into that as the week moves along. All right, it's after further review. We do have Monday Night Football tonight, and the rest of our show is going to be all Monday Night Football. Get you an update on Mike Thomas, who we know isn't playing, but what about that ankle? We'll talk about that. Take a look at Allegiant Stadium, which will open in just a few hours on Monday Night Football. Jimmy Ott will join us for Otterlocks. We'll get a preview from Sean Fazan, who is at Allegiant Stadium. That's all coming up here on AFR as we move through hour number 3, getting you set for Monday Night Football. Stay here. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.